everything that we've seen leading up to this debate and this moment really, whether it's Dick Cheney's endorsement of Kamala or this indictment we're going to talk about, demonstrate the panic of the U.S. national security establishment over the shifting world order. And that's, part of my take on the indictment of 2 RT employees I've never heard of before for pumping allegedly $10 million into a right-wing influencer operation that had very little influence at all.
This morning, we unsealed an indictment in the Southern District of New York of Konstantin Kalashnikov and Elena Afanasieva, 2 Russian-based employees of RT, a Russian state-controlled media outlet. They are charged with conspiring to commit money laundering and to violate the Foreign Agents Registration Act. That law, enacted nearly a century ago, was enacted to ensure that the American people were informed when a foreign power engages in political activities or seeks to influence public discourse. The American people are entitled to know when a foreign power is attempting to exploit our country's free exchange of ideas in order to send around its own propaganda. The company never disclosed to the, and that is what we alleged happened in this case. In the wake of Russia's brutal invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, RT, which was then known as Russia Today, was dropped by its American distributors. The company ceased its formal operations in the United States, and the European Union, the UK, and Canada banned RT's broadcasting. But as RT itself has boasted, the government of Russia continued to use RT to direct disinformation and propaganda. In the wake of Russia's brutal invasion of Ukraine.
All right. So basically, the indictment alleges that $10 million was sent through RT after RT, left Washington, was banned by Canada and the EU to create like a cutout of influencers. And in this case, although they weren't named in the indictment, it was something called Tenant Media based in Tennessee, run by Lauren Chen, who I had only heard about like a few months ago. She was sort of, Groyper adjacent influencer type, sort of alt-right figure. And they had these videos by Tim Pool and Dave Rubin and Benny Johnson on this site that like nobody saw. And apparently they were paying $100,000 per video, and Benny Johnson, Dave Rubin, and Tim Pool and the people making the content didn't know, according to the indictment, that this money was coming. Yeah.
No, and Tim Pool even said that the FBI reached out to him as a victim of this crime.
Yeah.
Because according to the indictment and the information that's come out is that they even created a fake profile for investors when people like Tim Pool or Benny Johnson would ask who's investing. They made up this fake character in order to obfuscate where the money was actually coming from. And so it's clear, in my view, that whatever this operation, how it was set up, it was almost like a way of entrapping people like Tim Pool or Benny Johnson and Dave Rubin, because they had no idea where the money was coming from. But then just simply now, because of this indictment, the mainstream liberal media can go out there and say these majorly influential figures were funded by Russia, even though they had no idea that they were getting that money. And thus through innuendo suggests that they were part of an operation, even though, as you say, they not only didn't know, but the videos that were put out on this site weren't really breaking through at all. It kind of reminds me of like the Bernie Sanders Facebook ads that they made a big deal about. And in the meantime, in the last few weeks, Lauren Chen has actually led a movement to boycott Trump, to withhold votes from Trump from the conservative side because of his more moderate position on abortion. And so to me, the narrative that these were people that were taking money from Russia in order to boost Trump, based on that fact alone, doesn't really add up. But it does seem like it was set up so that people that are actually influential, like Benny Johnson and Tim Pool, could be smeared through association in headlines. And that's really dangerous, because I think it's important that they're not thrown under the bus or branded in that way, because I mean, going back to having worked at RT during the first round of Russiagate, when we heard that Trump won the 2016 election because of Russian interference, I remember anticipating the big Office of the Director of National Intelligence report that was supposed to prove that. And all they had were segments from RT.
Right.
Openly labeled RT. It was no secret. It was Russian state media, just like the BBC's British media or Al Jazeera's Qatari media. And so it was kind of laughable that this was this was all the evidence that the government had in order to make its case. It's remarkable to me that since then, this company was set up in order to funnel money in this way that in some ways proves the DOJ's and the liberal media's argument all along, because they didn't have anything before. But at the same time, it was concealing the root of the money from the people that were actually taking it. So it's a very tricky and suspicious operation to me. And having worked at RT all through its downfall, or, you know, by the time I left in 2019, it wasn't officially shut down until 2021, right after the
2022.
Yeah, 2022, right
like
after
the day of the invasion.
Yeah, like a few weeks later. By the time I left RT in 2019, I can tell you that the government that was calling the shots inside the DC office was not the Russian government. Not that it ever was, but it was the DOJ. It was the US government that had put so much pressure on RT that had people working in the office that was actually running the show. And so to now hear that this fishy campaign was set up, this fishy media company was set up, like I said, it almost seems like in order to entrap people, really makes me wonder.
Yeah, it's very weird. From the Russian side, why would you choose those guys as your geopolitical analyst to break through? Why would you allow that much money to go to that little? Yeah, but Dave Rubin, I mean, it's not like this guy's actually, you know, a strong defender of Russia. If anything, he's aligned with Israel and is a tool for Israel. Benny Johnson, I mean, Benny Johnson's just like Conservative Incorporated. Tim Pool, he says some stuff about Ukraine here and there, like he's a little more, he's more articulate than the others. But my point is, this is referred to by Merrick Garland as an influence operation.
Yeah.
This was an anti-influence operation.
As if they were taking direction from their funder when they didn't even know who the funder was.
Yeah. And it achieved no influence. So the only influence it wound up having was that the feds were surveilling this. I don't know what they did. If they demanded that Discord give them a backdoor to surveil all the chats, you know, in compliance with US law, if they had human intelligence, if it was all just done through SIGINT or what, but they let it sit there for at least a year, monitoring it. And then they dropped it at the height of the election season in order to implicate Donald Trump in another Russiagate scandal. So it worked out perfectly for US intelligence. And there's a new US intelligence report assessing that Russia wants Trump to win. Well, if that's the case, this operation really backfired and was stupid.
I mean, Putin goes on the record all the time and says that he would prefer not Trump to be in office. I mean, maybe that's 3D chess. I don't know. But I don't think it's clear that the Russians really care at this point, considering they already dealt with Trump for one administration, had their big Helsinki meeting, and then saw it all go out the door. They don't trust necessarily Trump to come in and make peace. I think if anything, peace will be forced just by the fact that there will be no Ukrainians left to fight the war. But it was very also offensive for me to hear Merrick Garland say that Americans have the right to know when a foreign country is influencing their election, when he's never done an investigation into AIPAC or any of the Zionist media entities that are far more prominent and influential than Tenet Media ever was. And you know, it raises some tricky questions, because you have an operation like the Daily Wire that is just clearly a front for Zionism, like Zionist. They call themselves, they're like a Zionist Christian group, but they're kind of crypto there, and they run just cover for the Israeli government, bringing in all these major influencers like Matt Walsh and for a while Candace Owens to wrap up, you know, issues like woke identity politics and trans identity politics, which are pretty easy to dunk on, and then shield it or wrap it up in this like defense of Israel. And what is actually the greatest threat to free speech in the United States, which is the Israel lobby. But it's tricky because in that case, you know, people will say, well, they're not taking money from foreigners, they're taking money from American Jews. But I mean, what's going on here? If we really are talking about or worried about foreign influence or running cover for a foreign country here, it's not Russia that's running the show. It's not Putin that showed up in Congress and got a standing ovation, however many times Netanyahu did.
60 standing ovations or so. Yeah, I mean,
it's not
AIPAC
Russia that can get Cory Bush and Jamal Bowman run out of their office, their congressional office, or threaten Thomas Massie for speaking the truth. It's not Russia that's doing that. So you can't compare anything to the influence of Zionist media or money here. And Merrick Garland, for whatever reason, would never touch that. No.
I mean, if AIPAC was forced to register as a foreign agent, you would see so many espionage investigations. It would never end, because they're definitely dealing with classified material spirited out of Congress and out of the various agencies, and Israel gets to look at all of it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Mossad is actually involved with AIPAC. Like, give me a break.
And then with the funding, on the funding side, yeah, they use cutouts in the United States who are Americans. AIPAC says it's just a Jewish American group, and to try to register it as a foreign agent is anti-Semitic, and the government accepts that logic. So they don't have to report who they meet with, what the nature of their conversations were, if they spent money on taking journalists out to dinner, for example. None of that has to be reported. The way Israel operates, I actually know this through a friend who works on Wall Street and like hangs out with venture capitalists in New York. I'm not going to name the VC, the venture capitalist, because I don't want to like I don't know what could happen, but he's one of the major venture capitalists, hangs out with like hip hop stars in his office, celebrities, a zillionaire, and he's a dual Israeli American citizen. And he brags that he is a Mossad cutout. And when the Mossad wants to do a black operation, they tell him, we need you to deposit this much money into this bank account, and we'll tell you about it later, and then we'll repay you later, but it's your patriotic duty. And he just does it, no questions asked. So that's the way they operate. I mean, there's a great piece by Jack Polson and Lee Fong about this organization Concert, which is basically Unit 8200 veterans who are running a vast influence operation straight through the Israeli government's Ministry of Diaspora Affairs in the US on college campuses. It's not, it's all out there, but most of it is being concealed through cutouts. So there isn't much that can be said. So they got,
DOJ wanted to investigate that. They could, and you know, they're not going to do it. And we know, I mean, it's pretty clear why. I mean, if you look at the course of this war in Gaza. One other point I wanted to make is that Lauren Chen has not been convicted of anything, hasn't gotten to explain herself, but YouTube has completely removed all her videos from her own personal account. So there is no due process on YouTube or on social media. They completely removed Scott Ritter's account 2 years ago on YouTube. Jackson Hinkle's account was removed on YouTube, and pretty much the national security state just tells YouTube and these other social media platforms what to do. We're struggling to get a channel going on TikTok, and you know, we are an organic independent media outlet, but they censor virtually everything we do. So and they just took Candace Owens down, or
yeah, no, they just gave her 3 strikes for 3 past videos out of nowhere,
just back to back, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, and we got a strike again. We were banned on YouTube from reporting from the Democratic National Convention after our first stream for the most arbitrary reason possible. So that for whatever
Napolitano did.
whatever stupid and embarrassing thing she might have done, Lauren Chen, there's no justification for YouTube taking her down before anything is proven or she's been able to make any statements. And, you know, so we're witnessing a resurgence, not just of Russiagate, but McCarthyism on steroids. This is all coming from the same place. You know, if they're not going to be able to indict someone or send FBI agents to their house like they did for Scott Ritter, because what, he was contributing to RT and Sputnik, writing articles and published a book in Russia. I don't know the full story. If they can't do that, they're just going to smear people.